Monday, June 29, at death's door. Read Psalm 41, verses 1 to 4, 88, 3 to 12, 102, verses 3 to 5, 11, 23 and 24. What experiences do these texts describe? In what can you relate to what is said here? First of all, Psalm 41, verses 1 to 4. Blessed is he who considers the poor. The Lord will deliver him in time of trouble. The Lord will preserve him and keep him alive, and he will be blessed on the earth. You will not deliver him to the will of his enemies. The Lord will strengthen him on his bed of illness. You will sustain him on his sickbed. I said, Lord, be merciful to me. Heal my soul, for I have sinned against you. And Psalm 88, beginning at verse 3, For my soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to the grave. I am counted with those who go down to the pit. I am like a man who has no strength, adrift among the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, and who are cut off from your hand. You have laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, in the depths. Your wrath lies heavy upon me, and you have afflicted me with all your waves. Selah. You have put away my acquaintances far from me. You have made me an abomination to them. I am shut up and cannot get out. My eye wastes away because of affliction. Lord, I have called daily upon you. I have stretched out my hands to you. Will you work wonders for the dead? Shall the dead arise and praise you? Selah. Shall your loving kindness be declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in the place of destruction? Shall your wonders be known in the dark, and your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness? And Psalm 102, verses 3 to 5, For my days are consumed like smoke, and my bones are burned like a hearth. My heart is stricken and withered like grass, so that I forget to eat my bread. Because of the sound of my groaning, my bones cling to my skin. And verse 11, My days are like a shadow that lengthens, and I wither away like grass. And verses 23 and 24, He weakened my strength in the way. He shortened my days. I said, O my God, do not take me away in the midst of my days. Your years are throughout all generations. These prayers for salvation from illness and death demonstrate that God's children are not exempt from the sufferings of this world. The Psalms reveal the psalmist's terrible afflictions. He is without strength, withering like grass, unable to eat, set apart with the dead, lying like the slain in the grave, repulsive to his friends, suffering and in despair. His bones cling to his skin. Many psalms assume the Lord has permitted the trouble because of Israel's disobedience. The psalmist recognizes that sin can bring sickness. Therefore, he refers to the forgiveness that comes before healing in Psalm 41, verses 3 and 4. However, some psalms, such as Psalms 88 and Psalm 102, acknowledge that the innocent suffering of God's people is a fact of life, no matter how hard to understand. In Psalm 88, God is charged with bringing the psalmist to the verge of death in verses 6 to 8. Notice, however, that even when the most daring complaints are uttered, the lament is clearly an act of faith. For if the Lord, in his sovereignty, allowed trouble, he could restore the well-being of his child. Let's read that text, Psalm 88, verses 6 to 8. You have laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness in the depths. Your wrath lies heavy upon me, and you have afflicted me with all your waves. Selah. You have put away my acquaintances far from me. You have made me an abomination to them. I am shut up and cannot get out. At the grave's threshold, the psalmist remembers God's wonders, loving kindness, faithfulness, and righteousness in verses 10 to 12. You will work wonders for the dead. Shall the dead arise and praise you? Selah. Shall your loving kindness be declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in the place of destruction? Shall your wonders be known in the dark, and your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness? Despite his sense of being stricken by God, the psalmist clings to God. Although he suffers, he does not deny God's love and knows that God is his only salvation. These appeals show that the psalmist knows not only suffering, but also has an intimate knowledge of God's grace, and that the two do not necessarily exclude each other. In short, both God's permitting of suffering and his deliverance are demonstrations of his ultimate sovereignty. Knowing that God is in control inspires hope. When we read Psalm 88 in the light of Christ's suffering, we are awed by the depths of his love in which he was willing to pass through death's door for the sake of humanity. And so to finish today, think about Jesus on the cross and what he suffered because of sin. How should that reality, that God in Christ suffered even worse than any of us, help us keep faith even amid times of suffering and trial? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.